So hello everyone, welcome to VizConnect, connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. My name is Sagar Kapoor. I'm part of customer success team at Tableau. So all the sessions which are presented in VizConnect are uploaded to our VizConnect YouTube page. Go ahead, subscribe to it. Some great content waiting for you. Join the community on the LinkedIn. We have a group by the name of VizConnect. Go ahead, connect with the community, learn from each other, and inspire each other. So this week, I think Tableau Public has released its new cohort for Tableau Public featured authors. To congratulations to everyone. Thank you for inspiring us. I'm looking forward to learn from you how we can go ahead and improve our data visualization and storytelling skills. With that, let me go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. I have Gary Collins and Anjushree BV. So let me go ahead and introduce Gary. So Gary is a director of finance systems with a background in finance, BI, retail operations, and delivering change projects. During his spare times, Gary enjoys learning more about Tableau and data visualization through engaging with the data farm and community projects. Today, Gary will talk about charts to image animations in Tableau. So without further ado, Gary, over to you.
Thanks very much and welcome everybody today to this VizConnect session. So in this session, I will be discussing the inner workings of a Viz that I've made recently that uses Tableau's animation feature that was released in 2020.1. I'm going to show you the Viz that I created, my inspiration. I will share the early testing that I did to get the concepts right. I will show you some helpful tools on the internet that you can use if you would like to use this technique. And lastly, the challenges that I had and how I overcame them to create the Viz. But before we get into the Viz, just a bit of background about me for those who don't know me. So by day, I'm a Director of Finance Systems for Carnival UK, part of the Carnival Cruise Line Corporation. I have a background in finance, BI, retail operations and change delivery. And in my current role, I look after and implement a variety of systems. And I've been very lucky that I had the opportunity to lead the rollout of Tableau from proof of concept through to being an established BI tool in the business. The nature of my role often means that I spend more time in PowerPoint than I do in any of the systems that we implement. And when I was initially involved in Tableau, I could see its huge potential and wanted to learn as much as I could. This then has led me to the right hand side of the slide, and by night I spend a lot of my personal time learning as much as I can about Tableau, data visualization, and engaging with the DataFam community on Twitter and Tableau Public. So on to the Viz that I created. Now, my inspiration for this Viz dates back to an act that I saw on the 2013 series of Britain's Got Talent. As we are a very international mix on today's call, you may not have heard of this act, but I'm very sure that you would have heard of the Got Talent show, as it's now in 69 different countries. The act that inspired me was called Attraction, and they were a Hungarian shadow theatre company that told incredible stories through silhouette and dance. So I'm going to play the video now for you to give an idea of what Attraction was all about. So what I absolutely loved about this act was that it was really understated, very simple, and above all, you had no idea where the story was going to go. You had no clues as to what was coming next. And as a viewer, I found this really gripping, and I was glued to the screen to see what was going to happen next. Attraction went on to win Britain's Got Talent in 2013. So earlier on this year, I remembered the attraction, this attraction performance, and I kept asking myself the question: if this were to be a Tableau Viz, what would it be? So with a typical Viz, whether it's a long form or size for the screen, as a reader, you'll naturally scan it quickly, get an overall feel and impression, and then go back over the details. I wanted to create a Viz that was different. No scanning, no peeking at what was further down the screen. Something really simple, something really understated but surprising, just like Attraction was for me. So, let me now show you the Viz that I created. So, the Viz that I created was entitled The Effects of Extreme Weather on Health and Wellbeing in the Most Impacted Nations. And this Viz tells the story of global warming and the countries that have been most affected by extreme weather as a result. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick run through on the screen of the pages of the Viz to show you the chart to image transitions that I've used. If you would like to read the details of the Viz, then please go over to Tableau Public where it's available on my profile. So let me briefly run you over the pages. So I started out with an image of the world. I then moved into a transition for a bar chart, and then a series of images to explain the impact that global warming is having on weather. I then went through to a map to identify the areas of the world that are most impacted. And then the top 10 nations were drawn out on a ranking. I then took a focus of the top 3 and showed a map of those countries and discussed the issues that they faced and highlighted with the red where the major impacts were in those countries. And then lastly, I ended on a slide to wrap up. So that's the viz that I created. Now, let me take you over the basic principles of how I did this and the chart to image transitions. So the chart to image transitions are actually a scatter plot of 5,000 data points using XY coordinates for each of the charts and images. I used a parameter action to control the change from one image to the other, and the transition movement is enabled by switching on the animation feature in Tableau. And each one of the dots changes size or color as needed for the visualization, all controlled by tagging each mark with a size in the underlying data. So all of the data for this was held within Excel as an Excel workbook, and then I brought that into Tableau. So the Tableau is doing very few calculations with this, which keeps the transitions as smooth as they are. So let me now show you some of the early testing that I did to get this concept right. So I started out learning animations with charts. I started off creating a really simple data set that would allow me to animate between a waffle chart, a scatter plot, a bar chart and dot matrix, and then lastly, all of the charts disappearing off the page. So let me show you what that looks like. So I had a chart A, it's a waffle chart, then going into a scatter, then going into like a bar chart, and then lastly, being able to have all of those marks disappear off of the page and then come back as a bar chart into the scatter and then back into a waffle chart. So let me run through how this works for the animations on charts. So on this screen on the left, I have exactly the same chart that we've just seen, but this time I've left the axis on so you can see it moving, and on the right, this is the data that drives it. So again, this is exactly the same. So how this works, I have in here 100 data points in the data, and for every one of those data mark points for chart A, B, C and D, I've created an XY coordinate, and that is what is transitioning through as you see over on the left hand side. It's just 100 marks. So in terms of how this then looks to build that in Tableau when you get to a view, so this is essentially how I did it. So I put my X and Y onto the columns and the rows. Secondly, I created, in this instance, a parameter to filter out the data that I didn't want, so I was only showing the data for one of the particular charts. Thirdly, I dropped the mark number onto the details in the mark shelf, which is a really important step here. And then lastly, I switched on the animations feature within Tableau under format, and then I chose the duration that I wanted that to go through. So it's a really simple procedure when you get into Tableau and on the view. So then moving on then to how I did the animation. And this is the early testing that I did for animation. So I created initially three visuals, a map, moving into a bike, that also could move into a car. So map, car, bike. Now, what you will notice here when I did this, the transition from bike to map is really smooth. It looks really good. But then when I did the transition into car, I was kind of getting a bit of a weird effect on this back wheel and where you put the petrol in. So I'll show you again. They tend to just disappear off of the screen. And I wasn't too sure what was driving that. So a lovely transition there, but really not quite so good when it came to the car. So I'll show and explain to you why that happens in a moment. So first of all, what these images might look like are lines. Well, what they really are tightly packed dots that give the effect of the line. So in terms of how you get this data, or how I got this data, what you need to do is source an SVG, a scalable vector graphic file, from somewhere to use as your base image. Now I used the Noun project for this. And I got an icon from there. I got 3 icons from there, or ones that I wanted to do. And then I converted those SVG files into a series of coordinates using a tool called Coordinator. So this is available freely on the web, where you import your SVG file, you choose the number of dots on the page that you want to have, and then it will give you those coordinates. So this was the basis of how I did all of those images. And I'd like to say thank you to the Furlish twins, because I got the inspiration from this on one of the blogs that they have on their website, which was excellent. So I thoroughly recommend anyone reading that if you'd like to try this technique as well. So moving on. So let me then give you another run through of looking at those images and then looking at the data. So on the left, you see exactly the image trial that I did. So maps, bikes and cars. And again, really nice smooth transitions between bikes and maps with those 5,000 data points. But when I came to the car, again, I was getting this really weird kind of feel where it was kind of coming in and out of the screen and not transitioning. Now, the reason for that, if I go back to the same principle as I showed you earlier, I have a series of point numbers here, and I have the images of a bike, a car and a map with my XY coordinates. Now, if I go all the way down to the bottom, you'll notice what I'd done in my early testing. I'd actually had 5,000 data points for the car, but a lot less for both the bike and the map. I'd only had 2,856. So the effect of this is that when you transition from a car into a bike or a map, Tableau doesn't know what to do with any of these mark points where I hadn't put a number in. So they just fade away into the background. So it was doing what I'd asked it to do. But what I learned there was that you always need to have exactly the same number of a coordinate for every single one of those points. So if you do this and you find that actually you genuinely don't need some of these data points, my recommendation was just to put exactly the same number of your last one in and fill all of these numbers up, because that will give you a really smooth transition, and all of those data points will just combine into one, but it will keep that really nice feel to the transitions. In terms of how you then build this view within Tableau, it's exactly the same as charts. So X and Y on the columns and rows, then have either a parameter or a filter to select the data for just one chart. And in this instance of testing, I just did this on a filter, as you can see. Thirdly, with the mark number, put it onto the details in the marked shelf. And then lastly, point 4, switch on animations in the format and select the duration that you wanted the transition to go over. So I was really excited by this point. So I've been able to do chart to chart transitions and image to image transitions. So now I got onto the Viz to think, how am I going to now draw this together to tell a story? So I planned my Viz, and I planned my Viz to have 13 different pages. So 7 of images, 3 of the outline maps, and then 3, a dot map of the world, the dot map for the ranking, and the dot matrix for the bar chart. Now, how I created these, the 7 images and the 3 outline maps, were all done in exactly the way that I've just described to you around how I got images from the internet, and I created those into a series of data points. What I'll now do is work through how I did the dot map of the world, the dot plot, and the dot matrix for you. So starting with the dot map of the world, I use this website called Pixel Map Generator. So what Pixel Map Generator allows you to do is select any country in the world or the whole world, and create an image of that purely made up of mark points. So I selected the whole world. I then created those mark points and chose them to be circles, and you can choose hex as well. I then generated that as a pixel map. And then on the right hand side, as you can see, you're able to download that data. So I downloaded that as a HTML file and got the coordinates from that for all of the dots that are on the map. This is a really, really great tool. I thoroughly recommend it. So when I then put that data into Tableau, you'll see on the left-hand side, this is the raw data coming straight out of Pixel Map Generator. Now what it was doing was kind of stretching really at the bottom of the screen here and kind of being a bit more tightly bunched at the top of the screen here, really to reflect that curvature of the Earth. Now I didn't want that as part of my viz. I wanted a much flatter view of the map. So on the right hand side, you can see how I changed that data to have a much more evenly spaced y-axis across that, which gave a much better feel for what I was after achieving within the viz. So moving on to the second of those charts, I'm creating the dot plot. So I had there 10 lines across the screen and highlighting out a particular dot to show that I could use for ranking. So what you have here as I roll along, and you can see simply 500 dots all the way along times 10 for 10 different lines. And then I highlighted out one of those particular dots with a calculation when I got to this part of the transitions that highlighted out, which allowed me to show them for ranking. And again, the data on the right hand side, it's a very, very simple data set that I used to do this. Then lastly, the dot matrix bar chart that I used. So I used this to explain how the temperature of the Earth had changed over 130 years from the century average. So I did this by taking 130 different data points across the x-axis, and I didn't have any real simple way to do this. So I just simply worked out for every one of those 130 data points along the x-axis how many dots I wanted to include, going either up or down, and then I just created those manually. And again, you can see the data on the right hand side. So I had no way that I could find to do that systemized, so I just did that manually. So I'd got all of my data together by this point for all of the pages that I wanted to have in the viz, and I put them all together. Now, this is when I first put them together, I noticed that I had an issue with some of the images actually stretching. So let me go through each of these images and you can see them, and I'll show you what I mean. So this first page, really I wanted that Earth to be round and it's kind of oval. The bar chart, well that was okay. Again, when I started to get into some of these images, I was getting this oval effect here, and I really wanted it to be a circle. So I started to get into some of these images. It's a consistent theme. It was definitely getting these ovals coming through. This was really bad, where this should have been the sun and this is the Earth, and it doesn't look right like that. So this wasn't too bad as an image. It didn't really stretch. This one was maybe a little bit more stretched than I wanted. The map of the world, that came out really good first time round. As did this one, that looked really good. So the map of Puerto Rico definitely didn't work, so it was far too stretched. So I needed to do something with that. Exactly the same with Myanmar, that was way too stretched. But Haiti, that was pretty in keeping with how Haiti is. And then the last page with the summary and support header page that I had, that worked okay as well. So I had this issue and I thought about it for a while, and then I came up with this idea of using control points. So on the left hand side, what you see is exactly what we've just been through. So the images without control points. And on the right hand side, you'll see how I managed to fix this with control points. So what these control points are the last two marker points. So there's 5,000 and 4,999 as a marker point. And I took those out of the viz and used them, gave them their own unique coordinate that had the effect of changing either the X or the Y axis to squash it up in a way that made those images look a lot better. So you can immediately see on this page here, I've been managed to get rid of this oval effect here and make it much more circular. So if I now run through all of these and show you with these control points, obviously in bright red and much bigger for you to be able to see, but in the Viz, I've managed to colour them the same as the background and made them very small so no one could see them. So when I then roll through, you'll see them starting to work. So I didn't need one on this screen. That was absolutely fine. But I did for this one, and I got rid of that oval effect here and made it much rounder. So it really worked for me on that one. Again, I did it here to make that picture a little bit neater. This really worked. So that sun is lovely and round there rather than the oval that we have here. Again, it made the picture look better. I kept them here for that. The map didn't need anything at all. Neither did this one. I was be able to get a much better ratio on Haiti, which was great here by using these 2 points. The same with Myanmar, I was able to really make that look the way that it should rather than being far too stretched. And then Haiti was okay and didn't need anything. And so did the summary and support page. That was absolutely fine as well. So that's how I overcame some of that stretching, say by using these control points. So on to my final challenge now and the colours that I was going to use. So this is the Viz that I created, so let's go back to that. Now originally what I wanted to actually do was flip the colours and have the ability to flip. And I really wanted to do this kind of this white colour on this green background, because this for me was far more in keeping with actually what I wanted to achieve with it. And for me it gave it a much better look. This is what I was really going for. So I created this and I was really happy with it. As you can see, I'm now in desktop looking through. So I was really happy with that on the Viz. However, when I then put that into Tableau Public, if I just show you this video now, I'll show you what happened. So the first transition went through and it's kind of okay. But I really then started to kind of get this blotchiness and this graying. As Tableau Public was rendering, it was kind of highlighting and showing all of the various pages or views that I had on the dashboard that contained all the various information. I really didn't want this. For me, this would have been the effect of that silhouette show that I showed you at the very start that was my inspiration. It would almost have been like them turning on the lights in their show every time they made a transition to a different scene, and you would see them all moving about. So this for me really I didn't want to do. So for this Viz, I actually wasn't able to solve this. I couldn't find a way to solve it. So when I put the Viz up on Tableau Public, I actually just left it with the white background and the dark details, and I thought I would come back and find a solution to it within another Viz. And I've done that with another Viz that I've created. So now let me just walk you through that. So at the top of the screen, what you're seeing there is the Viz in question that we're looking at now, and you can really see all this kind of blotchiness and all this graying that really doesn't look kind of really good. Then at the bottom of the screen, you can see another Viz that I've done, which is called Tableau Darts. So this was just for a bit of fun, and this was again using exactly the same approach that I've described here on animations to animate a dartboard. Now the difference between these two that you can see here, I've got this blotchiness happening on the screen as I've got the overlapping views, but on the bottom I've got a much more uniform graying across the whole screen. Now the way that I did that I've described on the right hand side. So up on the top one, what I did was I just put all of these onto the screen, onto the dashboard. Whereas what I've done down here is I actually covered the entire dashboard with a floating container. I put all of the views that contained some of the visuals that I wanted into that container. So I had one here, which included all these dots. I had one here that included a score that builds up. And then rather than fill all of those empty views with a blank object, I used empty views. So I created multiple views rather than the blank objects to fill in. Now, the reason why I did that is a blank view will also highlight on Tableau Public in exactly the same way as one that has information or data in it. Therefore, what you end up with is a much more smooth and consistent graying across the screen. So in an ideal world, I wouldn't have any of that graying, but the effect at the bottom here is much better than this kind of blotchiness effect here. So if anyone wants to do a transition, this will allow you to have a much cleaner look if you want to use a darker background. So this now completes the techniques that I wanted to go through with the chart to image transitions. So when I put this up onto Twitter, I got a really great reception to it, and I was really happy with the responses they got. And particularly one for me where Jeffrey Shankar said, really impressive Tableau work here, Gary, bravo. For me was really great. I've really admired Jeffrey's work over the last couple of years that I've been involved in the data farm, so that meant a lot to me. The same for the response that Paul Isaacs had of beautiful use of transitions between data and images by Gary Collins 24. So Paul is works for Tableau and is involved in the development work for transitions. So being able to show Paul the work that I'd done was really great. So I've come to the end of this session now, so I hope this has been really useful to you. If anyone would like to reach out and chat more, then please get in contact. I'm on Twitter at GaryCollins24. I'm on Tableau Public as well. And I've also created a blog over the last few weeks called behindtheviz.co.uk, where I'll be going through a number of other techniques that I've used across the visualizations that I've done. So please do check it out, and if you're interested, please do contact me. So thank you very much.
Perfect. So let me go ahead and introduce our next speaker, Anjushree. Congratulations to her for being one of the Tableau Public featured author. So Anjushree is a senior BI analyst at Altus Group in Toronto. Her passion is to build visualization that tell compelling stories in visually appealing and concise manner to spread awareness of various topics. And she will talk to us about network plots in Tableau. So without further ado, Anjushree, over to you.
Sagar, I can't share my screen because I think that, okay. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sagar and VizConnect team for having me today. So my name is Anjushree BV, and I work at Altus Group as a senior BI analyst. I'll be skipping the About Me section because we'll build a network plot on that at the end of the session. So today I'm going to be talking about network plots, how to do it in Tableau, and what tools we can leverage to kind of plot our coordinates for the network graph. So what exactly are network graphs? It's just the interconnections between your entities where each entity is kind of represented as a circle called nodes, and they have relationships between them called edges or links, you can say. So these network graphs are helpful when you want to do your cluster analysis or you want to know especially where the density is for a particular topic that you choose. So it becomes quite easy for you to understand the demographics of those things. It's widely used in social network analysis a lot and used in the healthcare sector quite many times. So you can call this as types of invert or types of network graphs. So one major thing is it's either directed or undirected. So when I mean directed, there can be a relationship from node A to node B, but not the vice versa. And the same way you have weighted and unweighted. So few relationships you can weight more on maybe the strength, and fewer weeks. So as you can see, it's just a permutation combination. You have like 4 different combinations that you can have for your network graphs: undirected and unweighted, and undirected weighted. So these are some things that you have options to do it either in Tableau or in the time where you are doing your data prep. That's completely your choice. But yeah, these would be like the 4 types of input that you can provide for your network graph. And the other part is the variations that you can give to make your network graph, customize it with all the elements. And those are basically all the elements that are on your marks card: shape, color, size, text. And the other section where it really impacts how your network graph looks is your layout algorithm. And there are quite many. This is the tricky part in kind of finding the exact position for your nodes, and how does it look and how you want to position each and every cluster. So there are different ways to do this. You can choose an ETL tool of your choice if you're comfortable with Alteryx or Prep, or if you just want to do it with Excel, that's possible as well. Today I'll be using Excel just because it's kind of easy to do a hands-on, especially when it's a smaller data set. So the kind of algorithms you have that you can use is, I'm not quite sure if I pronounced this right, but bear with me. Fritcham and Ringgold, Yifan Hugh, DRL, Fos, Atlas. There are quite more, but the ones that I use most are these 4. So I'll quickly go into the Viz that I made first. Is the human disease network. So I'm essentially plotting all the diseases to which particular gene it is connected, and the diseases that are associated with it. And here you can see there's this big kind of a big cluster, and that's cancer. So using a network plot, it kind of tells you visually, easily also, that which is a particular disease, which is more happening very frequently and has a massive associated disease network, which can cause you something else, right? And again, if you see this one, the deafness, it's related to 41 genes and 25 associated diseases. But this is not as big as cancer. The only reason because the associated genes with it are associated with just single genes, whereas cancer, if you see leukemia, it has 26 associated genes, but it's also linked to 37 genes, which is very high. And that's how you can make your own cluster analysis. So I'll just so to plot these points this way, I've used Fritcham and Reingold algorithm for this graph. To plot these, there are lots of R packages and Python code that you can use to plot these if you're familiar with those languages. But I like to use a tool called Gephi. It's open source, so feel free to download it. Sometimes it has issues. The only way to fix it is you have to change the file path in the config file. You can find it more on the help guide. So I'll open this tool. I'll go through the process of how to plot and things like that, but I've already loaded the nodes and edges for the human disease graph. So when I go here, you can see all my nodes. This is how it's going to look. And few reasons why I like Gephi more is it's kind of a hands-on tool. It's very easy and it gives you more flexibility in the kind of algorithms that you can play around with. And there's another amazing feature that I think I'll probably save it for later. So right now I'll choose your fan hue. There are other parametrics that you can actually change. So see, they are kind of moving and adjusting. Mm-hmm. So now this is how it plotted, but it doesn't really look very visually appealing for me. You can see the cancer cluster that I showed you is in here. But this is something that I didn't want it to look this way. So I'll quickly show you how it looks with this algorithm. And also, mind you, the color and the size, text, all that you can actually do it in Gephi as well. If you're not importing that into your Tableau, you can do all those elements and much more in Gephi. You can run a bunch of statistic programs on the right side panel, and it will give you the centrality, the degree, and things like that. I would not be getting into it in this session, but you could use those as well. So now when you can see, so this is the cancer network over here. So it's still running. Sometimes it takes about hours when your nodes are quite heavy. And in here, the good part about Gephi is you have a couple of filters where you can actually filter out your node. Degree means how many links a particular node has. Like if I take probably this one. So this node has a degree of 3. That means it has 3 links. So when I go in here, I have something called a degree range. Kind of drag it down. So it kind of shows you the range of the degree in your network graph, and you can start to filter it down. It's still running, so let me stop it. But you could kind of, there would be some nodes which do not have links sometime, probably when you're doing the social network analysis. So you could filter out all those nodes right away in Gephi. So I'll leave that there. And yeah, so this is how it would kind of look. So I'll come back to this later. So like I was saying, you could do cluster analysis. This is another network graph that I built. Essentially, it's showing me how a Big Four firm is expanding worldwide, because it's not a single entity. They have like a different member firms where each firm kind of gets registered as part of that. So if you can see here, most of them have 2 or 1 global firm where all the other firms from different countries kind of come and connect, which is like a global entity. But for other countries, they all have separate firms. So if I have to go for Canada, for EY, it has this particular firm, which is integrated with EY. But then again, when you see this blob, it's quite different from the way these nodes are oriented. That's because Romania is a single country which has multiple firms, member firms in it. And that's same throughout across all Big Fours. And here and here. So these are some of the patterns that you can see which are similar when you're doing network analysis. So I'll go through the process of doing it. So I'll start a new project. So we are now essentially building my CV as a network. So here are my nodes. So you need an ID column and a label. This is just in case if you want to. So all your nodes are listed here, and make sure you save this as a CSV, because you can only input CSVs and Gephi. And you need an edges. So all you actually need is your ID and source target. So make sure you use an index match or a VLOOKUP to do that. So you have your source and target. Rest all you can actually have it, but to input it to Gephi, these 3 columns would do. Okay, so you go ahead here, you have your new project. Go to your data laboratory, go to the notes page. You see something called as import spreadsheet. You can also go to file and open the CSV. That's totally fine. Okay, I have my notes. So kind of shows you up, make sure it's the notes table itself. Sometimes if it's adjacency, kind of goes haywire. So you can see you have my ID and label and the weights on each of the nodes. So this is where you kind of mention Gephi if it's directed or undirected. So now you have your nodes. Load up your edges. Make sure you append it to the workspace when you do the other one. Okay. Something's wrong. Okay, anyways, this is how it will look, and I'll just use. Okay, just give me a minute.
Hey, Anjushree, are you speaking something?
I'm sorry, was I on mute?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. When did I last talk?
You said wait for 1 minute. I think after that, you're not able to hear anything from you. Yeah.
Oh, the whole presentation was on mute.
No, no, not the whole one. I think you have connected your data and you're facing some problem.
Oh, I
Yeah,
paused my screen then. Oh, sorry. Okay. I'll get back to the Gephi one then. Yes. So,
yeah.
this was where I would have stopped then. So here I have my nodes. I have my edges. I loaded it up. So you go back to your overview here, and I've used the Define hue. So this is how it comes up, and notice how these are like the thick bars. This is because I had weights on my relation edges, but you can totally skip in case you don't want that. Uh, I'll also show you how the Frischman Rango looks. This is how it will look if you use this. I'm going to stop. There are other features onto this. So in case you didn't want this so expanded, you can use the contraction and start to contract. Suppose if you're doing just like a blog embedded network graph, which has to be concise and you don't want to deal with those kind of things in Tableau, you can do that. And if you wanted to expand it more, keep running it until it kind of fits the size you want. And suppose I wanted these thick bars to come below and not on the left, you could as well use the rotate function, keep rotating until you get the proper orientation. And after this, you essentially want the coordinates for these nodes to be pulled in Tableau. So go to your file, export it as a graph file. It would have the extension .gexf and save it. And then you go back to your Excel. So here you had your nodes, you had your edges. You'll have to create your main page. So here, your ID is essentially the same ID as your source, and you get the source name and target name using an index match or a VLOOKUP, or any ETL tool which you're using. However, from the IDs, you get the names. You have your weights. This is, again, just optional in case you want your nodes to be bigger and smaller compared on any criteria. The essential column for you to have is the direction. Here, you're saying that this is a relationship from A to B and not vice versa. This is helpful, especially if it's a directed network graph. So my nodes and relations are till here, and the bottom portion is just another copy of this. Not the exact copy, because here my source and target codes are reversed. This is essentially done because sometimes you have nodes with degree 0. That means they don't have any link. We want to be able to plot all the nodes in Tableau. That's the only reason where you kind of reverse it and put it. So once you're done with main, you see that on your nodes, you just have still the label. You need your coordinates. I just have some description on going on, but these are the coordinates. But the way they come from is, I think I kind of imported. So you just go and open the GEXF file in Excel. It will throw you a bunch of warnings. Make sure you click OK for everything. Essentially, this is how the graph, when imported, will look. It looks a lot simpler, but this is not the case. We just have 14 nodes with a degree of just probably maximum 3. All the columns prior to your ID3 are of no use, so make sure you ignore them or just delete them. The ones that you need are here. The first section would be of nodes, where you can kind of easily see the difference, and this is of your edges. So here it's straightforward, but sometimes you might want to kind of copy this and go to your data and clear the duplicates because sometimes there would be. And now essentially what I need is you just copy this from here onto your notes page here, X and Y. And again, feel free to do it in any ETL tool that you desire. I'm just showing in Excel because it's easier. So now this main tab and your nodes tab is what we would kind of imported into Tableau. So I'll go here. I think I already have that up in here. Okay. So this is the main tab and this is the nodes. They just have a left sign on their ID columns. Like I said, we want all the nodes to be plotted, even the ones with degree 0, right? So that's the reason we have left join. You have all your data, you go in here. Sometimes X and Y pop up on the measures, but make sure you pull them up as dimensions and convert them to continuous. So I'm going to put my X and Y coordinates so you can see the way they are plotted, right? That's how we, okay, I changed it here, but that's how we had it on Gephi. And I essentially want the links as well. So I go ahead, make this a line. But this is where the column direction that we made comes into picture. And I make it a dual axis and synchronize it. Probably remove these. So yeah, you essentially have your network plot. And you can make it, customize it, give color, give shapes, most of it. Like if you see my human disease, I've used custom shapes here to get that effect. But okay, let me show this one. So you can even put, remember the weights that we had, or even you can use some other columns that you have to kind of put them and size them up. Okay. You could do that even on your links. So I already have made the, okay, let me also show you this one. So once your label goes on to shape, yeah, this is what I wanted. So you can use your custom shapes to do it. This is very helpful when you're doing your either Twitter analysis or something where you want the display picture to kind of be pulled. So I already made one. I'll go ahead and show this one. So this is the one that we made. So it's telling me my hobbies here, just giving a little descriptions. And it's giving me my employment thing, how much time I worked at EY and Altus. And this is my Tableau public journey. So I had 2 VOTDs. So I have the image of those VOTDs put up here. And I recently became a Tableau featured author. And this is the Meteorites Viz that was featured in the Viz gallery. And it's just my portfolio. I mean, it's just a simple way of putting all things together. And you can even use URL actions to kind of leverage, like I'll show you. Takes time, but works. Yeah. Okay. So these are some ways where you can kind of customize your network plots. Yeah, I think that's what I had. And this is my Tableau public profile. I have few of the network plots up there. Feel free to check those things out. And that's my Twitter handle. In case you need the source files or need any more help with the Gephi or any one of it, do reach out to me. Oh, I forgot to show. Okay, the best part that I was actually saving for the end. So now I have this. Probably I'll go for you and you. Okay, and probably I didn't want this node to exactly here. I can actually move this up this way, because sometimes when you're building customized networks, you might want other nodes to be in some other place rather than in the place where the algorithm has placed. Like special scenarios are this one. In yeah, in here at the EY, the Romania, I probably wouldn't want it to be in the center, so I would kind of pull this node somewhere here so that my member firms kind of look neater in the radial way. It kind of is very handy and helpful when you want to move nodes. And in Gephi, the best part is you can even add a node and a relationship on the go, and it kind of adds it onto your data. So you need not do it in the ETL path. It kind of is very easy to figure out probably if you wanted a node here or you wanted to move it that way. But then, yeah, please do reach out to me or DM me in case you need the source files or any help, or when you're stuck, would be happy to help. Over to you, Sagar.
Awesome. Thank you, Anjushree, for showing us some great network graphs, how you can create in Tableau. So let me go ahead and ask you some of the questions we have in the Q&A tab. Just one note, everyone. I think Gary is facing some technical issue, so he will not be able to join for the Q&A. But let me go ahead and ask Anjushree all the questions you have asked her. One question, Anjushree, I have is, if we want to create network graphs, can we just do it in Tableau rather than using Gephi?
Uh, I think you can, but it kind of gets very tough to do those complex calculations, because network graphs would just have like hundreds of nodes, right? They always have a pretty big number, and your whizzes would load like real slow. And that is not something that I would advise, because it's much easier when you use a Python core or a Gephi tool or something like that, because they already have the inbuilt algorithms where you need not break your head with those heavy calculations and densification and things like that.
Awesome. Thank you. And I have one question for you with respect to when you're designing a business dashboard, right? How how you are creative in going ahead and telling a right story out of it. Like I know that you can't use a network graph to go ahead and create a particular story, right? Because sometimes some of the business users are not able to understand such graphs. So what will be your feedback for everyone? How should we go ahead and decide the chart we should use for business dashboard, or maybe something we want to go ahead and tell a story out of it?
Yeah, that was a great question, actually. I think all of us in our business or corporate dashboards, mostly we essentially use line charts or bar charts, or at most scatter plots, right? Because that's what is easily understandable. And even I stick to those at my workplace. But we've had certain scenarios where our clients come up to us and kind of ask a specially designed report or something like that, wherein we have used sunburst charts or network plots. So it kind of, again, depends on who your clients are and how creative they're ready to consume that kind of information. But in other matters, I think in corporate dashboards, user experience and your navigation plays a major role. Even if you have simpler charts, being able to help them with the navigation. And I also say that there's like a 5 clicks rule. So when you build a dashboard, it has to be effective enough for the user to just not go beyond 5 clicks to get whatever analysis they are planning to get out of it. And it has to load at max within 15 seconds. So those are some things that I would keep in mind while building dashboards at workplace, rather than trying to use very complex charts in there if it's not on a special purpose.
Perfect. Thank you. And just to wrap it up, do you have any advice for someone who's just starting their journey with Tableau? And what's the impact of participating in Tableau community events like Makeover Monday or Workout Wednesday in your data visualization and storytelling journey, right? What will you advise people on these
Right.
particular community initiatives? Yeah.
Yes. So if you're a beginner, intermediate, or any kind of level that you are in Tableau, it's always good to kind of connect with like-minded people. So be sure that you are active on Twitter. And if you're a beginner and looking to kind of hone your skills, uh, for especially for the workplace, then I think Makeover Monday and Workout Wednesdays are your best places, because the kind of feedback that you get um, is something very valuable. But if you're someone who is looking into data art and want to kind of pick up on your design skills as well as your Tableau, then I would say Iron Quest, Viz for Social Good. If you're someone like me who likes to work on social issues, then Viz for Social Good is good. Uh, there are a couple of community challenges that you can participate, but it's always good to get out there and kind of network with your community, and it kind of gives you a lot of inspiration, because so many people are doing such wonderful work. We might just kind of pick few design elements, or how someone kind of visualized a particular topic in a totally different way that we would have kind of not thought. It's always good to be in the community, and Tableau community is very welcoming, and they always kind of encourage and push you. So yeah.
Thank you, Anjushree. I think thank you, Gary and Anjushree, for your time today on VizConnect. I think it was an honor to have you. So, with that, thank you, everyone. Take care of yourself, be safe, and we will all see you next week. Thank you. Bye bye.